Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
This story happened around 6 years ago when I worked for a retail company I will call No OP. Jay was well known to be a thief by the base staff and some of the lower levels of management. Unfortunately, she was a golden girl to Mo and Travis, and we never had any solid proof. We also didn't get paid, docked, and so on, unless it was over a certain amount, which it never was, so staff never had a real incentive to try and found proof. One of Jay's favorite things to steal were vouchers for money off products or shopping because you were just supposed to rip them off and put them in a safe. There was no official way of counting these to return them to the company, so she could use them again in a different store and get away with it. This particular day was Halloween and I was on till 4, the only till with no cameras on it. Mo came up and paid for her shopping with some gift vouchers she had received at a store manager's meeting because the store was doing very well. I served her and no one else touched my till all day because I was the main person on the tills for this shift. We closed up for the night and Jay took the register to be cashed up. I went up to the pub with friends and had a good night, not knowing what was coming. The next shift I'm on, Mo calls me into the office and tells me that the vouchers she used were not in a safe, and she knew that it was my till. She wanted me to return the vouchers and would not press charges or put anything on my file if I just returned them immediately. Of course, I did not have them and testified as such, but she didn't believe me. I went looking everywhere. The bin under till 4 and the bins outside, under the tills and on the floors around the tills, just in case I had dropped them or put them somewhere dumb while trying to sort out cash or so on. Roughly an hour later, Jay comes in, hears what's going on, and offers to look as well. She finds them in 30 seconds flat, somewhere I had already looked at. I essentially hissed at what a coincidence that as soon as Jay looks there, she finds it immediately. How coincidental, seizing with white fury as I knew now that she was now framing me for her own theft. She could have found them in the office and made it a simple mistake, but no. She made me the fall guy for her own idiocy. I tried to plead my case to Mo and Travis, stating that I wouldn't be dumb enough to steal vouchers that I knew were Mo's because I was the one who served her. One of the other team leaders, Paul, knew fine and well it was Jay and tried to tell Mo and Travis that I was being set up. But she was a golden girl and could do no wrong while my name was mud as far as they were concerned. Hell, they thought Jay had caught me in the act. This meant war. Over the next few months, I got really friendly with Jay, flirting outrageously with her and basically pretending like I really respected her and that we were good buddies. It took me a while to work my way into her trust, but once I was there, I knew I could catch her stealing and prove it. We wasted off a load of Christmas chocolate products that hadn't sold, and I put them in a bag to be put in a bin. Jay said we should take them home against company policy and seen as stealing, because they were just going to waste otherwise. We were standing underneath a camera just outside of its range, so I said, I don't want any, but if you want them you can have them, and put them on a trolley just inside the camera's range. I had studied the camera angles in great detail, preparing for a moment exactly like this. I saw her look at the camera, down at the trolley, and back to the camera before walking off to get her stuff. I warned my colleagues not to take any of the chocolate, even if offered, and I had an evil grin on my face, which my colleagues commented on. When Jay came down, she nonchalantly picked up the bag as if it were her shopping, offered chocolate to everyone and walked out the door with it. Gotcha witch. The next morning I arrived for my shift and put on the most somber face possible as I approached Travis. You should check the cameras on the back door at approximately 10:21 p.m. I think you'll find what you see very interesting. He asked me to explain further and I looked over towards where Jay was, not even 5 meters away, and I looked back. I can go into further detail right now, but I would strongly suggest you go and look at the cameras for that time now. Travis begrudgingly walked off to do just that, and within 10 minutes, Jay was called into the office and her bag was searched. Within the hour, she was suspended pending an investigation. Within a week, she was fired and barred from the store. I got a full apology from the managers who didn't believe me, who explained they genuinely believed it was me and had no idea Jay could have possibly been a thief. Their jaws hit the floor after I explained that every member of the staff knew she was a thief, but that we didn't feel like we could do anything about it. After going around asking people if this was true, I got another apology. 6 months later, I was offered training to become a team leader myself. I took it but ended up quitting for a white-collar role in a different company before I finished my training. So let me set the scene for you. I'm a 30-year-old guy, just your regular dude dealing with some not-so-regular challenges. I've got autism, Tourette's, OCD, and depression. Funny thing is, when I was a kid, they thought I had ADHD, and I guess it's easier to tell a parent their child has ADHD than depression, right? Anyway, my Tourette's makes me blink and squint my eyes a lot, and I've got some vocal tics too, like grunting, chirping, repeating words, and changing my voice. Thankfully, I don't have that vulgar language version of Tourette's. I am what they call high-functioning, and I put a lot of effort into being well-spoken. But I'm more of a reclusive type, not much into hanging out with folks. My life mostly consists of work and home. I work at a gas station and let's just call it Gas Mart to keep things simple. I've got to be careful here because I'm still employed there and my boss isn't exactly fond of funny name changes. Plus, in my state, I'm in the good old USA. My boss would fire me for that. But here is the thing. I wear a lot of hats at Gas Mart. I do everything from maintenance to IT when needed, and that's why they have promoted me to a manager position. Right now I'm working towards landing a job in their IT department. Oh, did I mention I'm a big guy? I stand at 6'3" and weigh around 320 pounds. I used to play football, so you can imagine I'm a pretty big boy. Oh, and working in customer service has a way of turning you into a bit of an a-hole. You see the ugly side of people more than anything else. Alright, enough intro, let's get to the juicy part. It all went down on a day when the lottery was the hottest ticket in town. The jackpot was whooping $600 million and another one was sitting pretty at $470 million. People were buying lottery tickets like they were candy on Halloween. I've been working the register for about an hour and in that time I'd sold nearly $1,000 worth of lottery tickets. We divided our lottery tickets into two categories: online and scratch-off. It was the online ones that were flying off the shelves that day because, you know, plastic can get you a chance at millions. It was around 4 p.m. and a line of about 5 to 7 customers had formed, mostly regulars on their way to work. And then she walked in, the star of our little drama, the entitled Lottery Lady, or ELL for short. I don't know if it was because it was January and frigid outside or if she was just naturally frosty, but a chill seemed to follow her as she breezed through the door without so much as a hello. She didn't even glance in my direction as she walked past the line and straight to the scratch-off tickets. Now, we didn't have one of those fancy electronic lottery ticket dispensers. No, our store wasn't that high-tech. So I continued to check out the customers patiently waiting in line. As I reached the last two, another 5 people walked in. Just as I started ringing up the next customer, the lady voice cut through the air like a buzzsaw. "Are you going to help me or just ignore me?" Now, I've been known to be a bit of an a-hole, especially to people with an attitude problem. I replied coolly, "Well, if you want to buy lottery tickets, you'll need to get in line like everyone else. My register is over here." The woman huffed and said, "You don't talk to customers that way." I shrugged. "Well, a customer gets in line." She snapped, "I was here before these people." I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Actually, you weren't. As I said, you need to be in line. Realizing that her demands weren't going to get her anywhere, the entitled lady grumbled and reluctantly joined the line. Don't you dare sell 13, 14, or 17. Those are my tickets. She warned me before taking her place in line. I apologized to the next customer, R, for the interruption, and he just chuckled. No worries, man. He looked at me with a sly grin and asked, hey, can you get me an online ticket and 3 scratch-offs? Number 13, 14, and 17? The entitled lady was still glued to her phone, probably ranting about my audacity on Facebook. Now you should know that the numbers and marks on scratchers mean absolutely nothing. The odds are the same nationwide, not just at my store. R headed out of the store with his lottery ticket request, a grin growing on his face. He returned about 7 to 10 minutes later, that grin even wider. The entitled lady piped up immediately. You sold me the wrong tickets. She was holding the scratch-off in her hand, visibly upset. I calmly explained, I sold you the next ones on the books. The lady retorted, no you didn't. I always check the numbers and look for the white marks. These weren't the next in the book. She then accused me. You sold my tickets, didn't you? I sighed. It's first come first served here, no reservations. The lady wasn't having it, and in her loudest, most entitled voice, she demanded, where is your manager? I decided to have a little fun and opened my jacket to reveal my name tag. I am the manager. The lady wasn't satisfied and she snapped. Fine, give me your corporate office number. I obliged and handed her the number. She stormed away from the counter to rant to whoever would listen. And that's when R strolled up to me, still grinning like a teacher cat. He said loudly, you know that number 14 ticket I bought? It turned out to be a $200 winner. I'm cashing it in and calling in to work. The lady's ears perked up at the mention of $200. She screeched, that's my $200. R, still grinning, responded, nope, sorry. I bought the ticket, so it's my $200. The entitled lady wasn't ready to give up. She reached into her pockets and handed R a $5 bill, the amount of the ticket. R raised an eyebrow and accepted the money before casually putting it in his pocket and cashing in his winning ticket. The entitled lady, feeling smug, watched as R cashed in the ticket. But then R dropped the bombshell. You know, I bought that $5 ticket with the bill you gave me. The lady's eyes widened as she realized what he meant. That's basically a gift unless you tell me what is it for. Who would trade $5 for $200? The lady was furious. She screamed, I am calling the cops. I couldn't help but snicker. Why? You're the one in the wrong here. She shoots back. Obviously, you're a tweaker, and he's probably one too. I was done at this point. How the hell do you figure that? The woman confidently declared, it's obvious. You're just faking this Tourette thing. It's an excuse to cuss people out. So you must also be one of those people who are, you know. She didn't say the word, but it was pretty clear what she meant. And that's when the lady made a grave mistake. She reached out and grabbed R's shirt, as if trying to make her point physically. R wasn't having any of it. He swatted her hand away. At this point, there were more people in the store, and they had witnessed the entire spectacle. The lady began to cry and scream, accusing R of assaulting her. I couldn't believe it. I locked eyes with the lady and said, leave. You assaulted him, and you're no longer welcome here. But she wasn't about to go quietly. The woman screamed even louder, now claiming that R had assaulted her. I'd had enough. I called the cops. First cop arrived about 10 minutes after I made the call and took the lady outside. And then the other cop came in. He asked me what happened here. R and I, along with a few others who had seen the whole thing, explained the situation. We were telling the truth and even offered to show them the CCTV footage. But then they said there was no need with so many witnesses. First cop eventually came back inside and asked me, did R assault her? I shook my head. Nope, not at all. She lunged at him, grabbed him, and he swatted her hand away. The others who had witnessed the incident backed us up. The second cop then asked me, "Did you tell her you have Tourette's?" I nodded. "Yeah, I did." The second cop seemed satisfied with our explanations and did not press further. They did want to see the CCTV footage, even though they had already decided there was no need, but hey, it couldn't hurt. That's when they hit us with a bit of a surprise. They told me they were charging the lady with a hate crime for her hateful speech. Now, I wasn't sure if that would stick considering she had physically assaulted R, not me, but it was something. First cop chimed in. She also claimed you stole $5 from her, but after seeing the footage, it looked more like a gift. With so many witnesses and video evidence, things weren't looking too good for her. Once all was said and done, the entitled lady was hauled off to jail with a few charges stacked against her. R, in good spirits, bought another $5 scratch-off ticket with the bill the entitled lady had handed him. And of course, he didn't win anything, and that's just the way life goes sometimes. Update. The next day I went into work and I was surprised to find out that the entitled lady had actually called the Gas Mart main office to complain about me. Thankfully, they saw right through her craziness and wrote her off as a nutcase. But here is a real kicker. One of my other regulars is a cop and he keeps an eye out for us. He told me that the entitled lady ended up with a drunk charge too, as she was under the influence. Not a big shocker there, she'll probably be behind bars for a decent amount of time. We won't know for sure until she goes before a judge, but honestly, after the initial rush from the whole situation, I've moved on. I hope she gets the help she needs, but as far as I'm concerned, she's an adult who can make her own decisions, good or bad. As long as it doesn't bug me, I'm good. It all started with a day of missed opportunities, a traffic jam caused by climate activists, and a fateful decision to seek justice. My friend, let's call him John, had a pivotal business meeting that could secure a lucrative contract for his company. But the traffic, clogged with environmental protesters, had thwarted his chances. He was furious, and rightly so. As evening descended and John drowned his frustrations in a sea of beers, he watched the news hoping to understand more about the bloody eco-terrorists who had derailed his day. And there, amidst the protesters, he saw a face he recognized. It was none other than a neighbor from just 2 streets away. Revenge simmered in John's mind, but his wife wisely talked him out of a rash confrontation. Still, he couldn't let the injustice slide, so he hatched a plan, one that would teach Mr. Entitled, as they would later come to call him, a lesson he wouldn't soon forget. The following day, John printed pictures of Mr. Entitled participating in the rope-blocking activities. Armed with evidence, he canvassed the neighborhood and confirmed his neighbor's identity. Mr. Entitled was known for his insufferable behavior, often laying claim to public parking spaces as his own private domain. John's neighbors were equally incensed by Mr. Entitled's actions. They agreed that blocking traffic was the height of entitlement. A conversation with the neighbor next door even led to a brilliant idea. What if they turned the tables and blocked Mr. Entitled for a change? Their plan took shape swiftly. A neighbor had a cousin who worked for a construction company, and they pooled their money to rent an industrial dumpster for 48 hours. The cousin's boss, also affected by the protests, offered a reasonable deal, charging only the actual costs plus a small fee for tax purposes. Free priority delivery was thrown in for good measure. The massive deep loader arrived in the neighborhood and with a cooperation of other neighbors, cars were moved to clear the way. The dumpster was positioned strategically right in front of Mr. Entitled's house, obstructing his front door and most of the sidewalk. The group then set up a small, impromptu party across the street. Folding chairs appeared and a table was set, and beverages flowed. They laughed and celebrated, anticipating what would happen next. Later that afternoon, Mr. Entitled returned home, a massive backpack slung over his shoulder. His face turned an alarming shade of crimson when he saw the container blocking his path. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, marching over to the group. "You can't block me. That's illegal." Amidst the laughter, John explained that there had been a mistake with the container size, but it was nothing to worry about. He could still access his house. Mr. Entitled protested, claiming this situation was entirely different from the traffic blockage. In response, John and the neighbors produced the incriminating photos of Mr. Entitled blocking traffic. "See, we're just teaching you a lesson," John said, flashing a sly grin. Frustrated and fuming, Mr. Entitled dialed the police. However, his frequent complaints about trivial matters such as legally parked cars on a public street had left the authorities less than eager to assist him. No police arrived despite his numerous calls. In his exasperation, Mr. Entitled attempted to enter his house but got his backpack wedged between the house and the container, causing an uproar of cheers and laughter from the group. Eventually, he managed to free himself by removing his backpack and squeezing through the narrow gap. The following day, a curious turn of events occurred. John's neighbor, who lived next to Mr. Entitled, received a visit from two police officers inquiring about the container. He explained the fictitious story of the wrong-sized container and assured the officers it would be resolved soon. He also mentioned that the neighbor across the street had arranged the rental. The officers examining the rental receipt suddenly recognized Mr. Entitled in the accompanying photograph. Amused, one of them remarked, "Wait a second, isn't that your neighbor?" The neighbor confirmed it. The officer chuckled before adopting a more serious tone. "Can you guarantee that this thing will be gone by tomorrow?" he asked sternly. Assured that the container would disappear, the officers departed, promising not to return. Mr. Entitled continued calling the police throughout the day but received only vague assurances that his complaints were being processed. Even the mailman, upon reaching his house, glanced at the door and then walked away. The construction company sent a deep loader to remove the container the next day, although one neighbor stalled the process for a brief period. Mr. Entitled could do little but watch in impotent rage. The police officers returned, issuing a warning to both neighbors not to repeat their blockade stunt. With the container gone, the situation was resolved, but the community had learned a valuable lesson. Mr. Entitled's reputation in the neighborhood plummeted. Open mockery and disdain greeted him at every turn. Several months later, he decided to move away, a fitting end to the saga of Mr. Hypocrite. And so the tale of John and his neighbors exacting sweet revenge on Mr. Entitled became a legend in the neighborhood, a story passed down from one resident to another, a cautionary tale against arrogance and entitlement.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.